Hello, everyone, and welcome to TelecomTV's super panel from the Mobile World Congress. I hope you all take your seats and join us in what we hope will be a very interesting, controversial, certainly informative discussion about 5G over the next 45 minutes or so. This is actually our 7th super panel. I'm delighted that once again we've been supported by Hewlett-Packard Enterprise and Intel, for which we are always eternally grateful. Our topic this year is 5G, and specifically, show me the money. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, 5G is everywhere at MWC. You really can't move without facing a 5G marketing onslaught. Yes, 5G is here. Yes, new opportunities are here. But, and it's a big but, how can service providers realize the full potential of 5G? And what transformational steps must CSPs make now to optimize this potential? Precisely what new market opportunities, especially in vertical markets, are going to arise? So let's find out. As I say, I'm joined tonight by a panel of 5 experts, and let me go through and introduce them one by one. On my immediate left, Robert Bojanowski from AT&T. Robert is VP Enterprise Mobility at AT&T Business. Next to Robert is Roy Kaiser. Roy is Chief Technologist PointNext at HPE. Next to Roy, we have Howard Watson. Howard is CEO of BT Technology Service and Operations and Group CTIO at BT.
Good evening.
Next to Howard is Caroline Chan. And Caroline is VP Data Center Group 5G Infrastructure Division at Intel. And last but no means least, we have Francisco Javier Ramon Salguero, who is Head of Network Virtualization Initiative, GCTIO, at Telefonica. So, 3 carriers, 2 vendors, we've got a good mix. And we've got, I'm sure, some people in the audience who would love to ask questions as we go through. I'd like to ask an opening scene setter question, really, to each of you in turn. And Robert, if I could start with you. Sure. What does 5G mean to AT&T?
Well, thank you for having us on the panel. I appreciate that, Intel as well as HP Enterprises and yourself, so thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. When we talk to our customers in the enterprise space, there is a lot of hype out there, and they want to talk to us about when can I get it, how fast is it, how pervasive is it, and after you go through that talk, they start asking questions about, well, what am I going to do with it? And so for us, it's about putting these enterprises on their digital transformation. What are you going to do with it? What applications are you going to run? What is your customer experience going to look like differently to disrupt your own industry with the technology that the likes of these companies are providing? So for us, it's that journey of the transformation that we're on in this new day and era with 5G.
And Roy, what about 5G for HPE?
It's a transformational opportunity, frankly, right? I mean, you see, over the years, we've had lots of technology changes and opportunities, and some of them are incremental. This one is clearly a step function, right? So for us, it's trying to figure out where to partner, who to partner with, because, as Robert said, it's a journey. No one knows exactly the solution. No one has figured it out end to end. So we're all kind of coming at it together. And so for us, we really see it as an opportunity to work with people to not only define it, but implement it.
And Howard, like your other telco colleagues here, you cover fixed and wireless. And what's 5G mean to BT?
So I think for us, if you take our largest wireless brand, which is EE in the UK, the customer proposition there is very much built on a best network proposition. 90% geo coverage on 4G, and route metrics consistently showing that network leadership. So in that respect, 5G is actually an evolution. And as soon as that technology is available and on our higher capacity sites, we will look to deploy that to users with smartphones. That's the first thing. The second thing, which I'm in respect of my job, somewhat most excited about, is it reduces the incremental cost of adding bandwidth into the network. So the extra spectral efficiency that we'll get through 5G and the ability to sort of satisfy customer demand with less upfront cost is a critical one. And then the third one is the step change and probably what is still the promise of future different incremental revenue streams.
Thanks. And Caroline, what does 5G mean to Intel?
So for us, it means to bring the goodness of the cloud to the network. It really means a couple of things. Number one is the ability to spun out services faster and more the innovation services. And then the other thing is that you started to really broaden the ecosystem. We still today really focus, the ecosystem for the telco is still very limited. You can name in one hand who are the players, especially around infrastructure side. But with 5G, because of the fact that everybody talked about you got to bring verticals, enterprises, you got to be able to accommodate a much broader range of players. What does that mean? You need to bring some IT practices, some APIs, some open ecosystem. The openness really becomes a key theme to be more like the cloud guys, because they've been running over infrastructure, telco infrastructure for such a long time, monetizing over something that we all collectively build and pay for. It's about time to level the playing field.
And last but not least, Francisco, what about Telefonica? What's 5G mean to Telefonica?
Well, I think that one of the good things of being the lasting one of the comments is that you repeat the arguments and no one blames you for that, right? But try to be original because essentially it's the same. I mean, it's of course it's a part of an evolution. I mean, if you name 3G, 4G, 5G, it's obviously that you are getting the new technologies with better spectral efficiency. You're getting a new way of making your own deployments in a manner that is more optimal. So that's only for that reason it makes sense to go to next generations. But in this case, we are seeing also the opportunity to have a more flexible network. I mean, if you think of the new concepts that are coming with 5G, besides having the different type of connectivity, are also about the way that you manage that network. You add those concepts in the past, it all that comes from the wave of NFV and SDN, about that freedom of molding your network, but it's mainly something that is more of the core or more for the fix. But now you have the last step, which is actually the assets in the access network, particularly the radio one, and still having the constructs that let you to customize for different industries, for different type of deployments, exactly what you want to achieve. So that is the other side that we see in 5G.
Well, thanks, everyone. And we're going to come back to some of those key building blocks in a while. But let's look at use cases first. We know that 5G deployment is going to cost. Vendors are relying on it to improve their balance sheets, after all. There has to be expenditure before we start seeing this projected OpEx savings and new revenue streams. So what would you say are the immediate use cases that are going to justify this investment in new 5G systems? Robert, can maybe start with your view?
But first, you know, as a evolution in investment, we've been through a lot of Gs, right? This is the 5th G. And each time we do that, we have a massive investment in the business case that starts and usually leads ahead of the service revenue. So this is not new. We stand up the business case, we put the infrastructure out, and then we go to market. Manufacturing is really intriguing to me. The ability to turn up quickly a robotics facility and manufacturing, anything that needs massive capacity and density seems really intriguing. To be able to speed up those cycle times, like BT, we have a world-class enterprise networking business, and so we have the luxury of a wired infrastructure and wireless, but those cycle times are challenging for getting those customers their networks. So in the mobile space, there's a lot of intelligence there, the speed is there. From a use case perspective, the one that really gets kind of emotional for me with AT&T's FirstNet network that we're building out for our nation's public safety network, you start thinking about the connected officer or the firefighter in a virtual reality type, augmented reality, firefighting face mask, knowing where in a building to go to rescue somebody to be a first responder. Those kind of things choke me up. Super proud to be a part of the AT&T FirstNet experience, and I think those are the things for us that we know there hasn't been enough innovation in those markets, in those segments, that we're now poised to go deliver.
Let's shake things up. Let's go carriers first, and we'll come back to vendors. Howard, what about some of those immediate use cases?
I mean, I think the first immediate use case is going to be enhanced broadband for consumers of mobile broadband. But I love the emergency services network point because we're working with the Home Office on rolling that on our 4G network. And you're right, I think what 5G will enable there is just a significant step up in the capability, as you say, virtual reality. Just the ability to get those first responders equipped with more knowledge to understand what it is that they're going into, I think is a really exciting use case. And the other one I think would, we're seeing again a lot at the show, virtual reality and augmented reality. And, interestingly, we did the Champions League final in Cardiff last year. And I was a little bit up until that point, I was a little bit skeptical about virtual reality. But when I saw the number of people who consumed that either on the BT Sport app or by YouTube, I was a convert in the moment to virtual reality there.
Francisco, what about Telefonica and immediate use cases? What might we see from Telefonica? What could be the areas that you're focused on first?
Well, I think that there are two parts of it. One is that if you look back on previous generations, what were the use cases in 3G and 5G and 4G? It's not clear. I mean, if we were in a panel back then and we say what were the use cases that we'll see and we justify that investment, probably we will fail. The same happens with FTTH deployments. You either believe it or don't believe it, and that's it. But there's something that could be slightly different in the case of 5G, is that, okay, it's more bandwidth, so it's more of the same and better, so better. But what about the niche cases? It remains to be proven, and in past technologies we have not seen whether the differentiation paid back. You were able to create in a cost-efficient manner something that was slightly different from the connectivity and others, and people were willing to pay for it in a manner that was significant and paid back the investment of that differentiation. We've seen that in QoS, in some technologies that, okay, they offered some niche, but did not show that there were some significant new use cases behind, right? Here in 5G might be different, but not because of the differentiation, the ultra-low latency or whatever, but because we have a different way of managing that. That is the promise, that we can take the risk without creating a new network in parallel for doing that. And that is the big change. So honestly, the honest answer is that we don't know. And actually, should we know? The things that we need to be ready for whichever are the use cases that are coming. And let that space to offer to the different vertical industries.
Caroline, you and Roy are both nodding in agreement when Howard was talking about enhanced mobile broadband. Enhanced mobile broadband is one of those three pillars of the initial use cases we've all talked about as we've been progressing with 5G. Is that the leading use case for you, would you say?
Well, so yes, because especially in the US, I live in Dallas, and they already started some of the fixed wireless trial, thanks to AT&T. But I might be biased. I just spent a week in the Winter Olympics and watching how 5G, it's a deployment that KT put up, Intel lucky to be part of it. It really transformed the experience for me. I'm not even a sports fan. I'm definitely not a curling fan. Anybody read my Facebook? I just got, my membership at Canada Club just got suspended because I badmouthed curling. But what they've done using VR and this concept, the 360 volumetric video or immersive media, really transform the experience, whether you are in stadium or not on a device. This afternoon, I hosted a panel on we call them live events and fan engagement. I had La Liga, FC Barcelona, Media Pro, who produces sports shows all over the world, and Intel Sports and Nokia on. And I realized at the event, you know what sports is? Sports breaks down all culture barriers. Chinese might not understand Korean, Korean might not understand English, but we all understood when there's a good basketball game or a football goes on. And the fact that we're able to put this in multiple angle, they showed us El Clasico, when FC Barcelona kicked somebody's ass, Real Madrid.
He mentioned Cardiff.
Okay, Cardiff. They put this multi-angle on. For the first time, I understood what offside actually meant. It's so transformational for someone who's not a fan. And I started getting very into it, because that is, to me, that is money to be made. That's why FC Barcelona was interested in it, because they have so many, they said that China is the largest market. I couldn't believe it. And most people probably would never be in the stadium and watch a game, but they experience it. And I truly believe that is money to be made if we do this properly. You can probably make it once and twice and 3 times.
Right, use cases. What can beat that?
Yeah, I was going to say, so Barcelona kicked somebody's ass. There we go. Well, I mean, if I get tactical about it, right, and the first thing I said was this is sort of a step function, right? But if you're really going to monetize it, you have to find a way to smooth that curve out. And so he's right, we've had all these Gs that have come so far, and there's lots of embedded investments already on that. So you have to find a way to leverage those investments to go forward. So, one of the ones that I look at and see is fixed wireless, I think is going to be one that really takes off, right? Because it leverages off the existing base, but it gives you the promise of what 5G talks about, which is the explosion of connectivity, makes it simpler in places where, you can't run fiber, et cetera, et cetera. But if you take it beyond that and you look at, it makes IoT and what everybody talks about IoT, I mean, machine to machine has been around for decades, frankly. But now it actually can deliver on the promises that it talks about. You can't do a connected car unless you can do 4,000 gigabits of data a day and offload that. Same thing with wheels to the ground and start offloading all the data off of your airplanes when you do the robotics, real-time concerns that you have around that. So I think you'll see those things that already sort of exist, but have never really fulfilled what their promise is and what you want to do. You're going to see those things expand first.
Real quick on the back of that, so as a carrier in a high-capacity venue like the stadium here, which went to a game this week, it was awesome, had a really good time, but from a carrier perspective, getting that high-capacity traffic off the network really quick is a good way to approach the ROI.
Well, we talked about use cases, and we've touched a couple of times here on broadcast and regards sport. Good time to turn to our audience, because in our audience, and I think there's a microphone coming around soon, we have a representative from one of the key vertical markets for 5G, broadcast, and from IBC we have Jessica Lapsiwala. Jessica, could you stand up there so we can see where you are? I'll embarrass you. Here we go. Jessica is head of content at IBC, and if you've not attended the IBC event in Amsterdam, I urge you to go this year because it is total broadcast. Everything you want to know about broadcast is at IBC. Jessica, I'd like to ask you the same question I asked our panel of telecoms experts here. What does 5G mean to the broadcast industry?
I think 5G is an enabler of content, and obviously essential for that sports, for the sports industry, the sports market. And my question was really about, my observations here at Mobile World Congress have really been about hearing what people are saying about the link between content and media. And in fact, there's a whole track in the conference on content and media. And there clearly is a need for the two industries to come together and collaborate. But my question to the panel really is about, in your list of priorities, where do you see the collaboration between content providers and telcos sitting in that list of priorities? And secondly, if it is high on the list of priorities, how do you see those business models working? Where is there opportunity for monetization, which will benefit both the broadcast industry and the telecoms industry?
Thank you very much. Who'd like to address first? Howard.
I mean, great question. And I mean, from my perspective, we run a global media and broadcast business, doing transmission of media content, and of course we have unique sport content. If I take the first of that piece, I actually think we will revolutionize the sort of content contribution part of that end-to-end value chain. And on one of the stands in the show here, the Nokia stand, if I'm allowed to say that, we're demonstrating BT Sport contribution using 5G new radio, and we can see real transformation there. And then I think you're right, for content that we own the production of, that's where we really do have the opportunity to, do what's just happened at the Winter Olympics and create really unique, compelling experiences for customers, both in stadium, and away from that, watching it live. And I think that's really exciting for us.
Caroline, Intel's been doing an awful lot with sports, for instance, and the fan experience. I'd like to contribute and look at.
I mean, definitely the rights, the content providers is a huge, important part of being able to deliver this. Especially like Intel just set up a studio in LA, the Los Angeles area, that we started looking at ways of delivering content. In fact, in CES, we just showed this, our CEO just showed this. There was an old Western movie where a guy in a horse rode into town and shot a guy. So they started taking that movie clip and show it from the guy that shot the guy's point of view, and then the victim's point of view, and then the horse's point of view. Think about that. You take the same content, but you change the angle, you customize it for the audience. Maybe I want to see that. Maybe I don't, maybe I'm looking at the bobsledding. Maybe I want to see the driver, the guy in the back, the audience. Different angles to personalize the content. So you can make money 3 times over. So for the content owners, you make money 3 times over. The delivery person, be it BT or AT&T, you can make money in different ways. And I was just saying in our panel that the Chinese always worry about the winners and losers and who makes the money. You take this whole angle and you can literally monetize it multiple times. So it becomes a really data-centric type of scenario. If any kind of sports or event becomes an entertainment that you can monetize it multiple times, that really becomes a opportunity for everybody.
I'll come to you in a second, Roy, but having been in the back of a bobsleigh, can I just say, I didn't see a thing, and I didn't want to see a thing either. I wouldn't pay for that. However...
On a horse, though.
On a horse, that's different. Roy.
Well, I was just going to say, everything we've talked about, when you boil it down to the fundamentals, it's data, right? And I think Robert mentioned earlier, what can we do to get that data off the network faster? So to the content providers and everybody else, what we really need to be able to do is get the right workloads in the right place. Because if you're going to meet 1 millisecond, latency across an end-to-end experience, that's going to require something different than we've been doing. So it really is about offloading that data as fast as we can, getting the right workloads where you need to have them. Otherwise, that experience, as fun as that all sounds, if you're sitting there and you're waiting for it to load or whatever, and it just takes your whole network down, it's no good. And you don't want it jamming up all your other mission-critical operations as well.
We've had an example here, a very, very simple example of dialogue between one of those key vertical industries and the telecoms industry. Now, we are not usually very good at that kind of dialogue. This is going to be so important. Dialogue and cooperation is going to be so very, very important as we move forward. How do we ensure this doesn't all fall apart and that we engage correctly with these industries and understand their expectations and what they really want from us and what we can deliver? Who would like to tackle that tricky one?
I think it starts with the imagination, right? Once you see an experience at the Olympics or on the back of a bobsled, it changes your life, right? And I think our customers need to be engaged. We definitely need more investment in proof of concepts. We need to go stand up our trials. We need to go push the edge of what can be done, because I think our enterprise customers are looking for better efficiency, better cost management, looking to differentiate. These are business problems that have been here 100 years. This is a new technology that's coming. Well, how are we going to do that and disrupt? They're looking to disrupt their marketplace, their segments. I think you had a terrific question, and what I love about the European football or soccer game is it doesn't stop like American football. Like we stop every 30 seconds, take a break, commercial breaks. It doesn't stop. But one of the things I missed, so when Messi scored his 2 goals this week, there was no replay. But imagine a stadium of 95,000 people, everyone getting broadcast the replay, multiple angles. I think it would just enrich the experience and would differentiate kind of that on-site, in-game experience in that particular area. But we're going to have to get a lot smarter. We're going to have to partner with different players and understand what they're trying to do. What are you trying to do in retail? What are you trying to do in the fast serve? What are you trying to do in manufacturing? What are your business problems in your digital transformation? And go attack it with them.
What's different this time around? Yet another G. 5G is an evolution of where we've been with the 3GPP process and LTE, but there's some serious new architecture and systems going on here. What are the unique attributes of 5G that make it so applicable and attractive to these large enterprise sectors? Howard?
I mean, the one that I'm most excited about in that context is the ability to do a much better job of fixed mobile convergence. So, bringing the capability of really ultra-fast fixed aligned with the architecture that 5G presents. And using that in a clever end-to-end way with network slicing and opportunities such as that. So I think those are the novel pieces that we are all excited about. Finding the revenue stream that encourages rapid rollout of that is the current challenge.
Francisco.
Yeah, I think what makes it different, I think that as we were mentioning, is that the ability to manage that network differently. I mean, it's not just the pure evolution of the technology that obviously it is, but also the ability to create that connectivity in a way that is efficient and is worth the effort. I mean, let's talk about the horses in the race. I mean, how expensive could it be to set up that infrastructure ad hoc when you don't have enough capacity, or you don't have, I mean, it's not trivial unless you know that you are in the Olympics, but actually what is at stake here is the ability to create it in an ad hoc fashion, because you essentially have all the ability and all the enablers ready to commercialize it. So it's a matter to finding someone who has the demand and you can offer it. So far from the demand to the offer, there are many things that happen in the middle. A lot of engineering, a lot of cases in what if, and a lot of hidden costs there. Actually, what 5G enables you is to remove many of those costs and have it ready and normalize the procedure for that kind. So yes, we can have the 3D, the immersive experience, not only because it's technologically possible, that is possible today, but also because it's feasible from the perspective of the business. And I think that is the differential.
Very good. I think this could be a good opportunity to throw this open to our audience. Do we have some, I'm sure we do we have a question or two from our audience? It's a little bit dark for us up here at stage, but, in the center, I think I saw a hand go up.
Okay. My name's Dr. Steve Marsh. I'm from a technology company based in Cambridge called Geospark. And I'm personally extremely excited by 5G and the future use cases that enables. But those new applications of the future are going to be very data hungry. And 5G, as you rightly said, it's a step change. We're going to go from the drip feed to the fire hose. We're going to go from big data to extreme data. And given that we're already struggling to handle the data that's being generated today, what is your strategy for handling the extreme data problems of the future? Because until we solve those, I don't think the value of 5G will be fully crystallized.
Thank you. Roy, do you want to take
I'll
this?
take a first stab at that. And you're exactly right. I mean, that really is, in my opinion, the hurdle for the ultimate realization of this ubiquitous connectivity, because it's petabytes for everything that we're talking about. But that's also going to be transitional in a way as well. And so for me, it really is about the right workloads at the right place. You're going to have to change the way you architect your network. We're going to have to get more aggressive about the things we put out at the edge. How long they stay out at the edge, how do we refresh? I mean, it brings the idea of caching to a whole new level, right? And to kind of tie it back into your previous question, Guy, the way I think we facilitate 5G being adopted is it can't be just these giant RFPs that go flying out, right? And everybody just bids on them and we see who the winner and the losers are. I think it's going to have to be much more collaborative because we're going to have to take this off in chunks because some of the technology will be ready sooner than others. And so if we can peel off those pieces, get some quick wins, if I can say, if a quick win means 5 years or whatever, but a quick win under our belt, as opposed to, when, I was a part of the 3G and 4G transformation, those were some pretty big, just kind of drop them into the network sort of plays. I don't think we can do that with 5G because, as you say, you're going to have to look at, with the content providers, what's the heuristic, right? What's the analytics telling you that you need to do? And then you're going to have to experiment with it. And that's what makes the ROI scary for folks. And I get that.
Howard.
I mean, just to build on that, one of the things I notice in the, if you like, the 5G sort of ecosystem that's very active, as we can see here this week, is that I think the industry has done a good job in the macro sense. So, the large operators with the large vendors have pushed the standards a little bit earlier than we thought, and we've got a roadmap of what we're going to deliver there. But actually what's, I think, equally as exciting is to see the amount of potential disruptors that are out there inventing technology to deal with specific applications. We're, for example, together on the telecoms infrastructure project, and part of that is to encourage potential disruptive suppliers with great technology who can start to tackle some of these unique, because I think the one thing we'll see, and with hyperdata, is sometimes processing at the edge will work. Other times we're going to have to backhaul it, lug it right back into some central point. And I think, getting some disruptive capabilities into our supply chain for those solutions is what I see at the moment.
Great. Do we have another question from the audience? I think I saw a hand at the back. Thank you. The microphone's just coming.
Yep. Roger Williams from Citrix. Question is more around app. We've talked a lot about heavy content, but from an enterprise standpoint, a lot of what they're interested in is delivery of applications. What do you guys see as the change in the balance of equilibrium between the cloud and the device in terms of how does 5G affect that?
Can I just be disruptive and just annoy all my operator friends here? I just want to say that I see a danger there. I'll give you an example. In the Winter Olympics, we have the KT who delivers. Right next to them is Alibaba, another worldwide Olympic sponsor. They actually, we talk about edge compute, and they grab onto that very, very quickly. They realize, I have the cloud, I'm going to move some of that to the edge. We gave them an SDK. Within 4 months, they've stood up this analytics running on the edge. They call it edge cloud, which is based on the concept of edge computing, multiple access edge computing. And they started mapping out the heat map of an entire Winter Olympics park. And they start predicting, I think they start with a 30 minutes and then 1 hour where the traffics are heading to. So there's implications, right? Because they do facial recognition, all that. The implication is phenomenal in terms of retail, in terms of smart city, security, crowd control, and all that. When I looked at that, I said, well, I'm happy because they're using my technology, but yet at the same time, they move lightning speed compared to the typical telco that we serve. So if you're not careful, yeah, they could take over. They can push the easy button and just hit it. That's a danger for all of us.
Anyone else want to come in on the question here?
Yeah, so I think it's a fantastic question. The prior one was as well. I think I go back to still solving business problems. What is the issue we're trying to solve? There's a lot of interesting use cases where you are pushing that compute closer and closer. So in your mobile infrastructure, getting that application super close to the customer. And a lot of customers that we're talking to want to manage their data locally for privacy concerns. They don't want it, even from the latency advantage they're getting if it's local, but they don't want it necessarily hopping out for privacy and security issues. So I do think the comment that was made prior is a good one. Sometimes you got to send it back. Sometimes it's locally being crunched. But I think all in all, there are some really interesting use cases. Back to this topic about monetization that we can drive. And to your earlier question, I think there's a lot of advertising angst in the market too from some of our new competitors, right, that are out there, like Alibaba as an example. So as an operator, we're excited about the new frontier of blending content and advertising, monetization of assets that we frankly haven't all had together in one spot before.
I mean, I have a slightly opposite view in a sense, which is, I think one of the explosion of data and the need for low latency, I'm glad I've got buildings close to customers.
Right.
Because I think that's a real an asset going forward.
Well, and you already have the relationship with the customer, and that's the stickiest of all, right?
Any more questions from our audience? Oh, there's one at the far back there, I think. Just at the far back behind the camera there.
So this one's kind of more of a business-oriented question, a use case question. So there's been a couple of controversial statements. If you remember back when 4G is first coming out, hey, it's going to take a killer app to consume it. But then, of course, people just transferred what they were doing on wireline to wireless, and the initial wave of capacity is consumed almost immediately. And then we've had recent controversial statements about just how long it took to get a payback on the investment. So if you were to place a bet, when do you think you'll exhaust the first wave of capacity in 5G? And when do you think you'll eventually get the payback on your 5G investment monetarily?
Tough questions. Who's going to be brave enough to go to tackle that one first? Capacity. That was being nominated.
I think it is a great question. And I think for me, the payback that comes quite quickly is reducing the cost per bit delivered to a customer device and the promise of the technology to do that. And that does mean that I can, already see not too far away, and I'm not going to tell you a year, not too far away when the break-even point is just from a pure cost point of view, supporting the existing revenues. So, and it's not that far away. So I see that. It's the rest of the technology that we have to build around the network to bring to life some of these more unique services where I think we're looking at what's the need there and how long will the payback for that be?
I do think that's a good question, and I know we're, as teams, all trying to solve those business case financials. It's really hard to return a good profitability on the current fixed wireless LTE case. The economics aren't really there. So what's interesting and appealing this go-around on 5G is the capacity and the cost per bit is way different. And so now I think you're going to see carriers around the globe really taking on this fixed wireless use case and pushing extremely hard on it.
I think we have time for one more. If you can squeeze in one more question before our allotted time is up, that would be great. There's a hand near the front earlier. Here we go. Second row.
Evening panel. Richard Baker from Geospoc in Cambridge, UK also. Smart cities haven't been mentioned this evening. We see them a lot around the conference, but we're facing a new era of multi-mode communication networks as we get into smart city architectures. What are your strategies as we think about hybrid fixed and mobile 5G networks, but ultimately the prioritization, the quality of service, the class of service for these new telemetry networks need to be bedded in standards for one, but ultimately you're going to be the custodian of safety. How do you face into that responsibility? That's again to the carrier providers here.
You go first this time.
No, I'll skip the one. No.
I mean, just as you know, we've been doing smart cities, a smart city in Milton Keynes for some time, and I think we've learnt a lot through that. And I think the standards piece, i.e., the ability to have very low power consuming devices that can stream the data, I think that problem is pretty much solved now. I mean, we've got to manufacture the devices at scale. We see the value in the data and the data hub and how you curate and then utilize that data across multiple applications. The problem at the moment, I think, is who owns the data, and therefore who can onward monetize it, and how does the business model emerge from that? And I think for it to really work well, we do need multiple industries in a city collaborating and agreeing to share and pay for that data as a way of making that model actually work.
Thank you, Howard. Look, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap things up rather quickly, but before we do, could I just ask our panelists for a final word? What we all must be focused on. What do we as an industry need to be focused on to ensure that we realize the maximum potential of 5G, in the shortest time possible? And Francisco, maybe I can start with you, and we'll come around the panel. Just a brief summary of our advice to the industry.
Well, I think, as was said before, we don't even know where that break-even point is. So, but still, it's a journey that we need to take. Taking into account the cost per bit is something that we can't afford not doing eventually, right? Besides that, there's a big opportunity to transform ourselves and the way that we do and we deliver the services. Right now, we've been talking about the big cases, but what about all that long tail? We need to be ready for that long tail as well, and that's precisely what you can't do that overnight. You need a lot of preparation and a lot of transformation in order to get the most from that. I think that if we manage to do that and start working now on that transformation, besides the evolutionary path on the radio strategy and the cost per bit, we will have way more opportunities in that space.
Caroline.
Enterprise digital transformation. If you would Google a blog just put out last night by Honeywell, talking about some of the proof of concept that we've been working with them in Silicon Valley around modernizing warehouse. Warehouse has been around for a long time, but based on the work that we've done together, they saw opportunity using 5G to uplift their warehouse business, which they house for many manufacturing and enterprises. And in China, the government is putting a mandate by 2025, lifting their state-owned enterprises into the modern age. And there is a lot of money that we made. That's why all the cloud guys in China are so excited about 5G. And I think these are probably good opportunity for us all to be willing to experiment and learn and fail fast.
And Howard?
For me, I think by the time we've achieved ubiquity on 4G, we'd have been doing it for 8 years. And I'm not sure that 5G will necessarily, if you look at trying to get to near 100% geographic coverage, go any quicker. In fact, it might take longer because of the densification needed and millimeter wave, etc. So I think that the most exciting revenue streams are from enterprises. And so for me, it's how do we stimulate enterprise use cases that do not rely on ubiquitous coverage as a way of generating immediate returns.
Right. And Roy?
Well, I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. I really think it's going to be about collaboration. And the question around smart cities is an excellent one. When I said machine-to-machine's been around for a long time, I was referring to smart cities in that as well. But if I look at the examples where we've gone in and worked with some really large cities, large conglomerates to do smart city work, they'll start out with one assumption, and they're going to say, we're going to modify our existing network to overlay a smart city plan. And then they come back, and if you do enough work with them iteratively, they come back, in some cases, we're just going to run a parallel network. It goes back to your point. Where are the places that they can optimize, even though they don't have 100% ubiquitous coverage? And I've just found that we've gotten not only better results, but much faster results when we do an iterative, agile approach to working in incorporating this new technology in different opportunities, as opposed to like standing back and just throwing sheets of paper at each other. So I think it's really going to be about collaboration.
And Robert?
Yeah, I think our message is that 5G is real this year. We announced we'll be in 12 major markets in the United States by the end of this year with a mobile service. So it's not all hype cycle. Right? It's happening. And I think with that becomes a little bit of patience. So what is it that we're trying to innovate on, and what solutions are we trying to solve? Is kind of a two-pronged message. It's happening, but we also need some assistance, need some patience to go build out these applications and prove in that there's returns for our customers, and therefore it'll be returns for us.
Thank you very much. That's all we've got time for tonight, unfortunately, but I'd just like to thank you all for attending our super panel tonight, and all of those who are watching online. Quick plug, you can watch all our MWC coverage at TelecomTV.com, as usual, of course. But please now join me in thanking all of our panelists and industry guests for their contribution this evening. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.